Hello, I'm Karen Gibbs, Design Director for Banyan Batiks, and so much going on today. Oh my goodness, so much going on. I'm talking about essentials or basics or what other words do you call that? Those ones that you are all driven about color generally and use as the supporting cast to maybe a main print or something like that. So I wanted to get into that a little bit, and then I started to realize that we have a lot being featured right now with essentials. So I made sure to post a few of those, and I'll remind you of those. I'm very excited that we're on the cover of QuiltMania with Trisha Patterson's quilt, and we have something coming up in American Quilter. And we have a block of the month coming with all of our essentials. So let's dive into that. Let's talk about the essentials. Oh, hi, Paul, Cindy, and thanks for joining me today. We're talking about essentials. That's what I call them. I don't call them basics necessarily. I call them essentials. So let's get this straight. Why are they essentials? Essential to me means it's essential to have every single color. You absolutely need that in your stash. That's what I think. So that's kind of why I called them essentials. But when we decided to start Banyan Batiks, we had to address that, right? We had to address how are we going to determine what our essentials are. Of course, you have your hand dyes, which are what we call shadows, and that's the basic color, right? That's how many of those colors do you need? I say maybe thousands, because there's so many different shades of gray and red and all of that. But I have to be reasonable sometimes, and that's very hard. Wow, Daphne, Patricia, and Leslie, thanks for joining. Um, so anyway, when we first determined that we needed some essentials and what were they going to look like, I really actually started with Kitan. Kitan was my first one. Kitan is sticky rice in Indonesia. And you can color the rice any, yeah, whatever the holiday is, you can color the rice. So that gave me artistic license to just jump, right? And it's kind of like a little rice motif. And I'll show you here. I have some. Okay, you can see it in the quilt behind me as a background too. Hi, Laurie. Thanks for joining. So this is Kitan. Okay. And what I decided to do was, yeah, I like it because it's a dot, right? It's a no print. You can do high contrast, or you can do something like this. You can kind of see it. So it's a low contrast, but it's something, right? It's got a chop design on it. When I started with Kitan, the first thing I did was look at my neutrals. I thought, okay, I want to address as many different ivories and creams and grays and all of those neutrals that I could. That was my first palette that I started pulling. And remember, all of these colors are mixed, right, in buckets and applied by hand for batiks. So that's interesting that they can make those differentiations of color for each one of these batiks, and I think that's phenomenal. That's just it's such a pleasure working with the artisans in Indonesia in regards to color. They're fantastic. So that's what I started with Kitan. I wanted my palette of grays. I wanted my palette of clean ivories. And maybe something that was a little more taupey and with a little bit of gray. And I think you saw a photo of what I'm talking about as far as how many different grays are there, right? There's like green grays, there's blue grays, there's a whole bunch of different ones. So I started there. And then I started going into, yes, you have to have the color wheel, right? You have to think about what kind of greens, what kind of blues and reds and all of that kind of thing. Do you want a high contrast? Well, if it's an essential, not necessarily, right? But you want it to stand on its own as well, so that those essentials can work back into collections. That was my goal. I wanted to make sure that any of the essentials that I designed, the upcoming collections that we have for Banyan, these kind of essentials, the colors that I've established will work again with them, because you want, I want you to use all Banyan Batiks in your projects, because they all blend so beautifully together. And that's the thought process, right? What are essentials? What are essentials in batiks? Is it just the shadows or the hand dyes? Well, no, I've kind of proven that's not true, right? With the Kitan. And missing trips to Indonesia right now and having those snacks. I think the next one should be sesame balls or something like that. I love those. Okay, so the Kitan, I also decided to make sure to address the multis in the Kitan. Okay, so I did this. And what this allows me to do is a whole bunch of different colors in the motif, and then maybe something more solid or dip dyed in the background. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to think of an essential. An essential also could be used for a border, right? The multis we have a tendency to use for our borders, to bring in all of those colors. All right, so let's talk about also now shadows. Shadows is the hand-dyed look. Okay, so there's no motif or anything on here, right? And what colors do you need? Well, thousands, right? You want a palette, just any kind of palette that you can have. So what I tried to do with shadows is the first ones I came out with were actually the two most popular are vanilla, and I think they're on this one right here. They're vanilla right here. It's kind of a creamy, right, color, and licorice. And that's this one right here. Now, this particular one, and I can talk about the licorice, how many colors are in there, right? It's not just, oh, here's black. You've seen green blacks, you've seen blue blacks, grayish kind of blacks. What about something that's more a flat black? This one has all of those colors in there, okay? You can see a lot of different movement in there, right? Because then that black will go with all of those different colors in your quilt. If you were to take a piece of your, go to your stash and grab a piece of black and apply a little bit of bleach to it and see, you can kind of see what kind of colors are in there. It's really, really interesting. So when you establish your black or pick your black, you want to make sure that the colors that are applied in to make the black and layered are a certain way, okay? Because then it doesn't maybe have a green look to it. Maybe it's just a rich black, okay? Pat, Ann, and Denise, thanks for joining today. We're talking about essentials, or basics as a lot of people call them. Another color that's very difficult to do is reds, okay? And we have a few different reds. You want a warm bricky red, you want a cherry red, you want a pink kind of red. There's a lot of different reds. Neutrals is another palette. I'm very much into my neutrals. I want to make sure we have the right neutrals. You have something that's a little peach, a little yellow, and then this one, I call this cheddar. That describes it, right? Cheddar. And then you've got a little bit of pale pink and a little bit of pale purple. So these are shadows, right? And they're the essential. Can essentials be used in a quilt all on their own? Absolutely. Why not? If you were to do that with shadows, you're kind of lending towards a contemporary project or a modern project, aren't you? And Christine Perigo has a project that was in QuiltCon last year, and she used batik, and really thrilled that all different aspects of quilting are embracing batiks now, and I think that's wonderful. Okay, what about brush strokes? Brush strokes is another one that I showed on a couple posts. The brush strokes, and you can see the texture in there, right? Really, it's kind of like a hand-painted stripe, and I folded everything in a length to fabric way, but you can get different textures in there because of a way that I applied some of the technique. This one here has got it's got multicolors, okay? This one right here, I love it. It's got just a little bit of citrine in it, right? And I use this one and another one in the Heart Flowers quilt that is going to be an American Quilter in March. So that's a sneak peek. It's not out yet. You can get a subscription, get your copy of American Quilter, give them a call, and let them know that you really like that Heart Flower quilt. But it's got some applique, and instead of doing just a shadow is an applique. I wanted more movement and texture and oomph, right? If I'm sitting there doing some hand applique, I want just a little bit more, okay? And that's what I think brushstrokes does for us. It gives us just a little bit more. And I just love the process of applying the color. And then you look here again, I'm fascinated by gray, right? This is quite different than this one right here. You can see the differences, right? Your neutrals, all right? A lot of different colors that can be achieved in batiks, okay? So that's a different one. What about luster? I talk about luster as one of my essentials. And that one really goes to it's essential to have every color. Absolutely. Okay. And there's 5 processes in it. So I took the 5 processes in luster and I made it an essential. Now, to me, the repeat of this is what's really interesting. Okay. It's a huge repeat, which is not normal for batiks. All right. So this has got like a paisley kind of background. Maybe this one is more of a focal piece, but this is such a great supporting cast piece. And if you look behind me, right, where is it? Right over there. I use the purples and I use the turquoises to support a main print from the Florentine collection that we've been showcasing and then will be in stores in the summer. But I want to showcase how luster can be a supporting cast a little bit, right? Or it can be an essential. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, and I think we shared it, this is new for us, a block of the month for Banyan Batiks, and this is showing to stores right now. So you get an idea of using all the essentials. The Kitan, we used some of the luster, we used some shadows, and we also used some classics, okay? There's a category that I have that's called classics. And what it is it started as black and whites, okay? And then black and gray. And what kind of gray? A dark gray, a light gray, okay? And it's these right here, these prints. And what I did with those is I did small prints and then I did larger ones. And then I kind of did a nod to like an Art Deco style clamshell. And then I did a swirl. And then I did an open flower. And just because it gave you different textures. And what I think really showcases that amazingly well, QuiltMania, congratulations, Trisha. Trisha has used these classics, which are essentials, in her cover quilt for QuiltMania, and it combines wool as well as the batik. And that's fantastic. That's another reach we're going for. So we're going for those modern contemporary quilters, right? But we're also reaching those people who really like the handwork and the embellishment and the embroidery, and that's usually associated with wool. Well, why can't we do that with batik? You know, when you're doing applique, you can press really nicely for your hand applique, okay? So with the classics, we expanded it recently for the new classics, and I did include those in the Heart Flowers quilt. That is in American Quilter. But this one, this is interesting, right? Because it's a soft pastel, right? I love my soft pastels. But also, we've got some interesting olives going on with the classics, okay? So it's the same motifs that I'm repeating over and over. So that would make an essential as well. Just like the Kitan, I've repeated the same motif over and over, okay? What do you think is missing in essentials or basics for batiks right now? Do you think of can you think of anything? Make sure you write me a comment and tell me, because I'd like to know. What essentials do you like to use? Okay, how do you use them? Do you use them only as supporting cast, or do you like to use them like as the main focus? Is it calming to you to not have a lot of prints in your quilts? I want to know. We're talking about essentials. I have a new essential that's coming out. It's called a BFFs, okay, best friends in quilting, right? And it's got a little bit of motion going on with it. And what I really like about it is the application of color. And I think I've presented that this past week or the week before. And these are the BFFs. But these are going to be out in August. And I focused a lot on the multis first with that. So all of my essentials, I make sure that I don't duplicate color. Because, you know, if you have an orange in the Kitan, do you need that same orange in shadows? Probably not. You're going to use one or the other. So I did that as well with the BFFs. One last thing, I am allowed to let you guys all know. Quilty Box. I am the featured designer in Quilty Box. I'm so excited, super, super excited. And I'm going to be using in a project, I'm going to be using my Northern Lights collection. Okay. And I think we did some flips through some of the colorways of that for you to see. Okay. So I'm going to be using that in a couple of projects, and I have a couple of my favorite gadgets in there. And if you've never seen a Quilty Box or you don't subscribe to the Quilty Box, I think I put a link in. Go explore their site. It's kind of interesting. You get to get into the designer's brain a little bit and see what they use and what their favorite gadgets are, and teaching style and pattern style. So you'll have a pattern in there as well. So I'm very excited about that. Keep your eye out, and I'll do post some more info about that. But make sure you comment here, and we'll do a drawing, of course, for a fat quarter bundle of some Banyan Batiks. Let me know what you think. Thank you.